Hey, this is Dr. Drew, and you were listening to This Life
with Bob Forrest
and Dr. Drew.
Here we are.
Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gather around the iPhone or the appropriate other technologies and get ready for another episode of This Life with Dr. Drew and Bob.
That's us, This Life, hashtag you live. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, at Dr. Drew, at Rehab Bob Forrest, where you can follow Bob, at This Life Podcast, and at First Lady of Love. Get on the email list at drdrew.com. Get all our weekly series, including the Opium series, which you should read. It tells you really how we got into this mess. I know you think it's all the drug company, but we put the whole thing together.
Doctors are involved.
Big time. We at Dr.com linked to all the podcasts we do. Click on the Hydralight banner. These guys are beyond the best. I love those guys. I love the hydration product. And check me and my lovely and talented co-host Lauren Savan on KBC 790 Midday Talk, Midday Live. And we're together noon to 3 Pacific Standard Time on 790 in Los Angeles and KGO 870 in San Francisco. You tune in. Also, you can get the podcast at kbc.com or dr.com. And get all the podcasts here from Playroom Pod at dr.com as well. Also, Mike Cathwood and I have a new podcast called Swole Patrol, health and fitness podcast that people seem very interested in. And please do tell a friend. We appreciate you being a part of this. Having said all that, here we are.
Holy God.
Holy moly. Holy moly, man.
So, you know what I've always wondered?
Yeah.
So, sometimes there's things I want to get when you're reading stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't get it.
Why?
You got to rewind to get it.
What?
Right?
You mean you want to hear
it? You read
it?
it so fast, like nobody's sitting there with a pen writing it down.
All right, so
you should just go to drdrew.com,
okay, and
right?
the Hydralight banner, you get 30% off if you use the code DRDRW.
But drdrew.com is where they need to
Everything's
go.
there. Yes, please.
Yes,
go there.
that's
Everything's
the
there.
place.
Everything's there.
And for me, it's rehabbob.com.
There you go.
So then all the other stuff that we say is there. But the reason why is because I'm redoing the outside of my house, and those things that advertise on television, the lights that don't need any electricity.
Yes.
I was trying to get it, and then I was like, I ran to get a pin, and then I was running, and I couldn't get it. But then I realized I have DVR. I can go back and get the phone number of the thing.
But if it's on, yes, you can do that with podcasts.
You just stomp them into the ground, and they flash lights out with no electricity.
Yeah.
$19.99 for 4.
Yeah, there's all kinds of them, too, if you go online. There's a lot of stuff. So here we are. I'm feeling increasingly disturbed about the opiate crisis. I know you now do the Don't Die podcast.
Yeah, it's coming to Orange County is the problem. California's been safe from it. It's all been Midwest.
From the dying?
The dying. But now fentanyl is being flooded into Orange County and San Diego County.
Yeah.
Yesterday or day before yesterday, the largest bust of fentanyl in American history was in San Diego.
What, a thimble?
So it's
a thimble? That's all you need.
11,500 doses. How many people could you kill with 11,500 doses of fentanyl?
30,000.
God,
Easy.
30,000 people could die.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So it's here. I think the L.A. gangs are holding off on it because they have these machines of bringing the tar heroin.
They don't want everybody to die. They don't want them to
Maybe
die.
they don't want their customers to die.
They don't.
Yeah. But Orange County, San Diego County, it's starting to tick up. And I've been crying the alarm for 2 years because I went to Ohio. It's crazy.
Well, speaking of upset and loss,
this is depressing.
Why don't you introduce this? I don't have words.
A guy I met at Cat's Deli a few years ago, the greatest podcast about addiction and using. It's Dave from the Dopey podcast, and I love the guy, and he works at the greatest restaurant in New York City also.
Cat's Deli.
Yeah. And how are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing okay. That's a very nice introduction. Very, very good introduction. But I mean, I'm doing okay in that it's a sunny day and I'm sitting in the suburbs and it's beautiful, but I'm not doing okay because my incredibly close friend and podcast partner and creator, Chris, died about 11 days ago from a drug overdose.
Yeah.
Which you know about, which is just fucking terrible.
Can
I curse on this podcast?
Yeah, go ahead, please, especially with
something
like this.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's shocking, kind of shocking, because he seemed to have been, it's the cunning, crazy nature of this illness. He had what it takes to get better and continue to get better.
He had both sides. He had left brain,
Yeah.
right brain to addiction. So we met him 10 years ago. He was only 33. I thought he was like 40.
Yeah.
He was only, Dave and I talked.
I know he's
talked
lived
when it
so
happened.
long. He's lived so rough and
But
so
we
long
were,
that he
I
seems
was dealing
older.
with him. I haven't worked at Lost and Seen Us in 8 years. And so it had to have been, he must have only been 20 or 21 or 22 when he was there.
He was just out. I think he almost, didn't he was just an adolescent, essentially, a young adult.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, he was about as experienced with drugs as you could be.
Well, and with the psychiatric hospital in the system, too.
You know, he was an atypical, Dave and I have talked about it right after it happened. He was an atypical, certain psychiatrist who we will remain nameless, patient, intelligent, amiable, wealthy, like funny, interesting, right? It's almost as if these psychiatrists love to get their claws in those types of people. Right? Without criticizing the psychiatric community, Drew's rubbing his eye. That means he doesn't want to talk.
I don't know what to do with it, because you could also look back on that and go, hey, they got him through, and he was way better and doing great. And so I don't know what to make of it.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But he gravitated
It's
back
so
and
easy
forth
to look
between
at.
the two worlds.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, he seemed to be doing so well. He had gotten at least 4 years together, if not 4.5, because who knows when he started using.
Yeah.
He was just such a deft liar. You know, the phrase in 12-step that always comes up is the constitutionally incapable of being honest phrase pops up in my head.
Well, when that happens,
he had
though,
his shit together.
Yeah, but
there is a whole medical practice who reinforce that constitutionally incapable, because they say, "Oh, those people don't know.
They're too sick.
You got a psychiatric illness."
Yeah. So he was getting his PsyD. He was in training. People that didn't listen to the Dopey podcast, I would suggest
I think he was starting to embrace those visions of addiction.
Well, hold on. Well, maybe, and I would urge you to all look back on previous Dopey podcasts if you want some of the most honest, open discussion.
It is the greatest when it comes to this sort of thing.
This is two guys that've been through it, understands this thing and all its facets, and we're happy to talk about it. And one of them has been now taken away from us because of this illness. So when I heard it happen, I said two things.
Psychiatrist.
Well, I went first.
Come on now.
So hold on. So first I went, oh my God, that sounds like a suicide. It doesn't seem right to me. I mean, it seems so destructive all of a sudden. And I asked Dave, and he went, absolutely not. Then I went, oh, well, this is how all our patients die. He saw a doctor.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, guess what Dave told me?
Yeah, he probably had something.
So Dave, what happened?
Well, I don't know that he saw a doctor. I know that his girlfriend has suspicions that he saw a doctor, but what happened was he got hurt. He got injured on vacation. He was managing a sober house at the same time. So the question is, did he see a doctor and score pain medicine? Did he take Suboxone off one of his patients? We don't know. I don't think he went from nothing to everything, though. I think there had to have been a slip, but we don't know what it was.
Now, Dave then started looking back and wondering, how I wonder, a guy in solid recovery that gets an injury doesn't run to a doctor, so I'm wondering if he was already in trouble. And then that leads me to, then it's Adderall. It's either Adderall first, then opiates, or just straight opiates. Right? I mean, Bob, that's the story.
I don't think
Benzos too, though. Benzos.
But let me just say something. Let me just say something about Chris really quick.
He was in school, needed to concentrate. Come on. Go ahead, Dave.
He was diagnosed with this ADHD age 10.
But I don't care.
He was on Adderall. He was on Adderall when he was 12. I don't think he's going to be getting prescribed Adderall in graduate school. I just don't see it.
No,
I talk to this guy many times a day.
But I deal with a lot of PsyDs, and they all just trade Adderall to stay up to do their schoolwork a lot of times. And Dr. Blum, who we worked with for years, talked about residents taking, what was it, to get through residency? What was the thing back then? The drug, what was the name of it?
Disoxin.
Ritalin.
What?
Ritalin.
Disoxin,
yeah.
Right? So, but in the end, it doesn't matter. It's just another case, and I can list them. Chris Cornell, DJ AM, Chester Bennington, several friends of mine, hundreds of clients of mine. It is a treacherous world, the medical profession, and being a drug addict.
Yes.
It's a treacherous world.
I always, and
remember, the dentist is treacherous.
Absolutely. I would tell every drug addict I know, beware the medical system. Beware of it. And now we have this intermediate zone where people are on replacements, where it's still beware, everybody. Just beware. They don't understand this illness. When was the last time you and I ran into somebody that understands addiction? Think about it.
I go back and forth. I don't even understand.
Let me say this real quick. Fucking Chris understood addiction.
Yes,
man.
he did.
Chris understood it.
Yep.
And he thought, and Bob, I know you're going to be able to relate to this. He thought, he would say it all the time. If I do dope while fentanyl is out there, I bet it'll kill me, but I don't think it would kill me.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? He was in this denial of his own imperviousness to opiates. That was the big problem here, more than anything.
I never heard that out of him. When did he say that?
He said that all the time. I mean, what he said was, I bet you fentanyl would have killed us, Dave.
Oh.
But then he would kind of look at me and say, I don't think it really would kill me, though.
Well, but I always
how he was.
See, I thought he was joking when he said stuff like that. He sort of
He kind of half-heartedly was joking. But I'm more concerned with the living. How are you doing, Dave? Because that's immediately when somebody dies of drugs, I think of their sponsees, their sponsor, their friends. That it's going to be somebody else that's going to get triggered to use next. I know you're solid, and we talked right afterwards. But it does have this effect of like, what is the point? I know a lot of my friends have died, and I've thought, what is the point of all this? It profoundly affects the way you think about things.
What is the point of?
Sobriety. So I'll give you an example. One of my good friends about 10 years ago.
Jesus, are you going to relapse now?
It's possible.
Dude,
it's possible.
You're going down a bad path.
But you got to listen, though.
I'm listening.
One of my good friends who worked a way better program than me.
Which isn't hard. Sorry.
A way better program than me. Attended way more meetings than me. Sponsored way more guys in a real serious way. Took the program utterly serious. Relapsed out of the blue. Still going to meetings. So that mythology of you're not going to meetings, though it might be true in some cases, this is a mysterious illness that is inside the black holes of our mind. Mm-hmm. And it will come out. And somehow I've been most affected when my friends have used again. Mm-hmm. I say it reinforces my dedication to sobriety, but it also, it's not, Drew always says it's an envy of them being able to use and get away with it. It's just something about the whole thing becomes disillusioning.
Well, let me just be clear. You taught me that envy. You taught me about that. Now you've lost it. That's not good.
Seizes that.
I know. It seizes everything. It uses everything.
Right.
It uses good and bad. It just uses it to its advantage. And it's because it's coming bottom up through your brain.
Yeah.
It's not coming top down. Recovery is top down. Addiction is bottom up. These primitive...
By bottom up, Dr. Drew's referring to your subconscious.
Your way motivational systems. Below, yes. These biological systems.
And somehow I think the death of a close sober friend or the relapse of close sober companions, sober buddies and stuff, re-triggers that primal part of the brain in some way. It influences it. It makes it wake up. Say it's dormant, it makes it wake up.
Well, here's what it does. I mean, you correct me if this is wrong, and Dave, you ring on this too. It goes, first of all, I told you. It's all bullshit.
Nobody stays sober forever.
Right. It's all bullshit. Come with me. And then your antisocial stuff goes, God damn, well, it's not all worth it. Why do I bother? So the two line up, right?
Yeah.
The illness is always going, that's right, it's all bullshit. Everything's bullshit. Come with me. Come with me. Join me.
Right.
Right? And if you have an antisocial streak, you got to watch it then, because that's another, well, why should I listen to them? I should just go with my instincts, which are to use.
Well, it's
such a horrible illness. It's so terrible.
And so, Dave, have you thought of, now he's describing what I felt like about 10 years ago. My antisocial thing now is everyone in America is on drugs. There's no way I'm taking anything.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
That's what's been working for me for years.
Good for you.
Right? So how is yours working,
the way I look at it is, I look at it like this. I don't have the greatest program in the world, but Chris's fucking dying and relapsing, it does not make me want to use.
Good.
It doesn't make me want to use it all. It and I loved getting high. I loved getting high more as much as anybody or more than anybody. But I just fucking lost everything in my life, and I just got it back. You know what I mean? I have this beautiful little kid. I've got an infant. I've got an 8-year-old. We just bought a house. If I get high, it's all gone. Yeah, I love Dopey. I don't want to fucking lie to the audience. I love being sober, and I also feel like I couldn't get any higher than I was. It would just be bad. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing else. There's no more mountains to climb in terms of getting high for me.
Why you know that, and your disease lets you see that, I'm not sure. But that's a very positive thing, right?
Yeah, that's also, if you think, also you and I, like, how long have you been sober? 8 years?
No, 3 years this week.
Oh, okay, 3 years.
3 years this week.
But did you have sobriety before?
Yes. Yes. But I never had long periods.
Yeah.
I was in and out forever until 3 years ago.
Let me comment about something. There was somebody that the whole Demi Lovato thing got everybody all stirred up. We can talk a little bit about that. But let me just, if you don't mind, real quick, I want to get you an email, and I want to respond to it. It's from Kathleen. You said relapse is the rule more than the exception. You could not be further from the truth. I want to stop you right there. There's simply a fact, and this is a simple fact, that on average, it takes 4 treatments and 5 years to get 1 year of sobriety. So please do not distort what I'm saying. That is simply a fact. Being with long-term sobriety, relapse means death. Of course it does. I'm not saying it's okay to relapse. So be careful of your narcissistic sort of perceptions of what's being said. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about the disease of addiction and the reality of the statistics around. You took 22 treatments. Dave, how many treatments for you?
I can't even count. Probably 11, 12.
Yeah.
I mean, including public detoxes. I was probably in 10 public detoxes in LA alone.
Right.
I was in and out of detox a million times.
American Hospital? Did you go to American Hospital?
Oh, he's out here?
I went to the shittiest one. I think it was American Hospital.
No, but he was out here?
I went to Tarzana. I don't even remember. I was just in such a haze. I just went where it was free.
So oh shoot!
I always go back to SAMHSA and NIDA and the original things. A third of the people who hit bottom get sober right away. Remember, a third was an idea in the 80s.
No.
Now say it's 20%.
Listen, I can, for instance, in adolescence, it's very unusual to sustain sobriety, at first treatment. I can only think of one case we saw where that happened. Jack Osborne. It's exactly right. And it was extraordinary. Extraordinary. We all went, oh my God, what just happened? And so it's rare.
He's still sober, right?
Yeah.
He's still sober, Jack Osborne?
Yeah.
He's sharp. That kid has always been sharp.
He's awesome. Yeah. But there is these categories then. Let's not put percentages on them.
Okay.
Some people just take to the whole thing and the ideas right away, right off the bat.
Yes.
When introduced to them. Some battle with it back and forth, but eventually get their footing and embrace
and by the way, we're talking about.
But then there's I think it's growing. Just as you say, the getting introduced and get it right away is shrinking. The never get it is growing.
Right, and getting it is the key here, right? That's actually the term I would use to describe what we're talking about. And we're talking about inpatient treatments, not people that show up at an AA meeting. We're talking about inpatient treatments. People show up at an AA meeting, I don't know, probably same kind of thing. People come and go and finally try it and stay with it. But getting it, I had a patient say once to me, how do you give somebody get it? She was on her 4th treatment. All of a sudden, she got with the program. And she was like, I was resistant. I don't know why I was resistant. And now I just get it. How do you give somebody get it? And we have no idea. Nobody knows the answer to that.
Well, I had a similar experience when I got sober, which was it's drugs. It's really simply that simple. What I had gotten into was trauma and all the things and the steps and the and it was just so simple, black, white. And then I had a client embrace that at Los Encinas, and he said, drugs bad, sober good.
Yeah. But willingness to go with that is a thing.
I mean, that's about as basic as it gets, right, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, when I actually got clean this time, I was 41 years old, and I figured I'd ruined half of my life. And if I was lucky, I was going to have another half of my life and I wanted to have some say in the second half of my life. That was my thinking when I turned my life around.
Well,
you know,
and
and also, like, I never had anybody depend on me before. I depended on everybody else, and to have people that need me to do for them is a big deal for me.
It is a big deal, and please don't stop doing the Dopey podcast. We got to get you at least. I don't know if you have a partner in mind, but just keep doing it for the time.
Drew, I'm fucked. You got to set me up with some funny junkie in recovery. I'm in big trouble.
In recovery,
Artie Lang.
He's on the Artie Lang is in the pre-contemplative mode, but he's right around the corner. He's right
sober,
he's right there. He's right there.
If he is sober, I would strongly recommend it.
He is the funniest.
You're going to have to place the call, though. Wait, Artie's not like answering my text too often.
I know who'd be great with this? Be Colin Quinn.
Oh, yeah, Colin lives in New York.
Call Colin. What the fuck? Call Colin.
Yeah.
And so, you got to carry
Colin
on.
Quinn ignores my tweets. Got to get Colin on the table here because he's not communicating with me.
He may not have
time. You got to hook me up, okay?
He may not have time.
I like the pre-contemplative.
I know. I like the way he's mapping it out.
You mapped it out. So, I just love the podcast, and I know that you're going to continue it, and of course, Chris will be, he'll be in the ether of it. He's there. It was his idea, kind of, wasn't it?
I wonder if he should. Jeez, this would be painful, but I wonder if he should deconstruct some of the things Chris said on the podcast.
Well, Dopey has this dedicated following. They've been emailing me of things that Chris said, and he sounded different.
Why don't
and
you
then
find
Dave,
those?
Did you see something that somebody posted where they said, you said I was going to be a guest, and they said they had been concerned about Chris, and like, oh, good, then Bob's going to confront Chris. Like that, people listen to your podcast
I saw that.
dedication.
You should find out.
Dude, our fans are the...
Yeah, I know.
No, please, Drew, please, I'm listening.
You should find the clips and play them, and it's a good education for people to keep tune their ear to this illness. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that it could be painful.
Well, I want to say I want to put it on your podcast just how much I loved Chris. Like, he was my best friend, and doing the show with him was the best time ever. He fucked up, though, obviously, and we're depressed that he fucked up. The podcast was my idea, but he was the joy of the podcast because he was King Dopey. He had done everything you could do. He would draw puddle water to shoot dope. He was ridiculous junkie. He was the worst.
Ridiculous.
That's when I met him. That's why I was so shocked at how young he was. When I met him, he already had those stories.
Yeah, 22.
Right, he was already the worst.
Yeah, it was crazy.
He was already the worst. Exactly.
So
exactly.
And I shared with you. I had some close friends die, and I didn't go to their funeral. I just choose to think that they're just not around. I just don't see them because they were such a profound effect on my life. They're with me every day.
And they died of addiction?
Yeah. One of HIV and AIDS, but same.
God damn it.
The same thing. It's same kind of deal. I went to Chris's funeral. I was one of the pallbearers.
Oh, God.
And it sounds cheesy to say this. It was like a real gift of my sobriety. Okay. Like when people used to say that shit to me, I'd be like, this guy's full of shit. Yeah. But when I actually was able to be present for my friend's death and carry his body, I felt like this was a gift of my recovery that I could do that. I could be counted on for my friend's family. It was very meaningful to me.
Wow.
And what you're saying, Drew, in terms of like putting his story out there, assembling quotes and stuff, I think that's a good idea. I wanted to, how like they used to like fake people on like Howard Stern, and Howard Stern would answer, like have conversations with people. Yes. I kind of want to put that together with Chris and have fake conversations with Chris's ghost. That's what I want to do.
Oof, that'd be chilling. But
he would love it. Chris would love it.
He would love it.
Chris didn't want to die. He didn't want to die.
Oh, Dave, you're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit.
Stop.
You're breaking up a little bit.
You're breaking up a little bit. Your phone, but. Yeah, he didn't want to die. I don't know of a lot of junkies that do want to die.
Some don't care.
Exactly.
That's more poly.
Well, Bob said to me something really funny. Bob, Bob said to me, if he wanted to die, he definitely would have left a note because he was a narcissist like I am.
I've left so many notes. I keep them.
Well, we haven't had a conversation about all the suicides out there yet, have we?
Well, I think that's the shame,
notes.
The shame that comes from it all.
Well, no notes
crazy.
are telling.
No notes are
especially from the narcissists.
Yeah.
So just
what does no note mean? What does no note?
Chester wasn't a narcissist, though.
He left a note, didn't he?
Yeah, he wasn't a narcissist.
No, I know.
I know narcissists.
No note, right. Note.
That kid was as humble as they come.
I know, Chester.
It's unfucking believable.
I know.
We've had a lot of deaths in the last year around here too, Dave, so we'll grieve with you.
It's all mental health.
Every time the word suicide comes up, I see Chester's face. Yeah. And I'm just like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do know what you mean.
And it's crazy, but...
And these are all people full of life, which is hard to reconcile. Chris amongst them.
Yeah.
How our thinking of them is those, full of life moments we had with them. And yet they are just, biological beings like the rest of us. All right, I'm going to take a little break. Dave from Dopey Boys, thank you so much, Dave. Hold on. We're going to take a little break. We'll be right back. Well, it's about time for athletes, trainers to report for the start of the fall season, but we are still dealing with that extreme heat. So even if you're training indoors, dehydration is a major issue for amateurs and pros. Water, sports drinks, they do not do a great job. I've known this for a long time. That's why I wanted to develop a product. Instead, Hydralight came along, so I strongly suggest you stay ahead of your hydration with Hydralight. The best way to stay hydrated is with a proper balance of sodium, glucose, and water, and Hydralight does this better than anything else I've tried. Everyone here swears by it, my wife, my kids, my patients. I use it if patients need rehydration. It's a way to replete hydration orally. This gets you ahead of the game, and so you can sometimes avoid hospitalization things in my experience. Hydralight comes in great flavors like orange berry and lemonade, available as a pre-mixed drink, a powder, or my personal preference is these effervescence tablets. You simply drop in a glass of water or a bottle of water. Literally, we don't leave home without these. Compared to sports drinks, Hydralight delivers up to 4 times the electrolytes with 75% less sugars. Hydralight solutions are appropriate for all ages, and each bottle or package includes easy-to-follow instructions. This is the best hydration product out there, period, end. You can find Hydralight at Rite Aid or at hydralight.com/Dr. Drew, DRDREW. And for a limited time, our listeners can save 30% on Hydralight. I just sent my daughter over to buy this stuff. She's like, I need Hydralight. I'm like, go to the website and use the code DRDREW18, DRDREW18 at checkout. That is HYDRALYTE.com, hydralight.com/DRDREW18. To use that code, get 30% off. You won't need any other hydration products. It's the best. And we are back. We're talking about the Dopey Boys and the Chris who has left us.
Let's talk some good stuff. So one of
please,
I
was getting depressed
Chris's
here.
favorite guy who he had always wanted to have on Dopey was Artie, and he just did it a couple weeks ago.
Right, Dave?
And Dave, I got to compliment you. There's some comedy people in here in LA that listen to that, and they've all told me, like, that is the funniest podcast in the world.
With Artie.
Yeah.
So
that's why we got to get
Really?
Artie.
That's awesome.
And so there's just something magical about Dopey. And here's my experience. So I met you that day with the family, right? And then I listened to some. Then I listened to some Dopey things. Then I started talking about it to some very close clinical friends of mine who were so anti it.
Why?
Because it romanticizes using.
No, it doesn't. It humorizes.
Not you, obviously.
It humorizes it.
But people,
I'm skeptical that those people know what this is. If they what the illness is and what the illness needs. If they don't,
they're very
understand
codependent. There's a lot of people who work in treatment who are very codependent.
But they're in that Dunning-Kruger world of everything's outrage. Hey, you can't joke about that.
Well, Dave, didn't you guys get some negative commentary from the sober community?
Yeah, from the treatment community, we got a little bit of shit, but we got way less shit than we expected.
The codependents, the patients, the addicts. This whole idea of changing the nomenclature of addiction. That's the codependent caretakers again, because my patients love being called junkies once they come to terms with it. They're like, that's what I was.
That's what I am.
It's all right.
So anyway, so then the reaction I got from clinicians, like they don't like that Dopey podcast. I was like, well, they know about it. That's interesting. So they listened to it, hating it. That's interesting.
To be fair, these guys are a little harsh on clinicians too. They are because they manipulated them. And
Chris did.
Yeah, Chris.
But so then that's when I was on the show and realized who Chris was, and that and it's just been a love affair for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And it is the funniest podcast, and you can't stop it, and you got to keep it going. And I know it's a hard time for you to try to figure out. Well, do you guys ever talk about it if one of you dies, what you're going to do? Because that's what junkies talk about.
Yeah, that's the most. Well, that's the most fucked up piece. Chris always said, if I relapse and die, I want my friend Todd to replace him. But unfortunately, my friend Todd overdosed and died 7 weeks ago.
Oh my fucking God!
The two of them are dead in 2 months. Todd I used with more than I'd ever used with anybody, and he was the funniest motherfucker you could ever meet. And then Chris, Chris named the fucking replacement to be the biggest junkie of all, who was already dead by the time he was dead. So I'm left without a replacement, but that's some classic dopey shit right there. It's just very typical for me. I have to say though, also,
if you were to die, who did Chris want to have replace you?
No, he said he couldn't do the podcast without me.
Okay.
Chris was a slacker. He could. Chris wasn't the guy. Chris was like the ultimate fucking foil, the ultimate wingman. He had every piece of information about drugs, recovery, and psychology that a person like him could have. Yeah. And then he's also funny and had the best stories. But I always wanted to have a show. So in some ways, Chris, made my dream come true and helped me have a show. And then he left, which was very sad. But the outpouring of our fans, who I made a joke and called our fans the Dopey Nation on our second episode.
Love it.
And it totally stuck. And the Dopey Nation, it's like our downloads have like tripled since Chris died. I kind of wish we had faked his death a year ago so he could have seen this whole thing. He would have loved it. Chris would have loved it more to anybody.
Why don't you interview people from the Dopey Nation in Manhattan? There's a lot of people there. And do some interviews, share some ideas. You got a lot of stuff you can do, Dave. There's a lot of creative things you can do still.
You tapped into something which, I always say, after the AA meeting, we used to all go to Canada's when I first got sober the first couple of years. And all we did was talk until 2 o'clock in the morning, stories like Dopey.
Why don't you have a Dopey Nation booth at Cat's? Seriously.
Yeah, live from Cat.
Yeah.
I think we should leave the restaurant out of Dopey. Dopey and the restaurant should never meet.
All right. Well,
nobody should know about that.
Some booth somewhere like Larry King. You can have the Dopey Nation meets every Tuesday or whatever, and do a little podcast.
Yeah, so funny.
Well, let's talk about.
No, there's a ton of listeners who are going to be telling stories, and I have a bunch of guests who are coming on. And it's going to be, your friend Steven Adler is about to come on.
Great.
We're going to try to poach as many of your guys' friends as we can, and just see what we can do.
If you're having Steven on, get ready to hear about the 4 Truths.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, he's a fanatic about this book called The 4 Truths. Have you heard of it?
The agreement.
Yeah, 4 Agreements.
4 Agreements.
My God, he's got a PhD in the 4 Agreements.
It's really helped him, so we're all for it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was weird. I was watching some TV show, and they mentioned the 4 Agreements, and then I called Steven, and the first thing he said was the 4 Agreements, and I was like, whoa, that's trippy, man. And he was like, yeah, that's the 4 Agreements, man. It's trippy. He was just so funny with it.
It's so crazy.
He's the best.
I mean, who could have planned that? If I would have known that on Celebrity Rehab, I would have gotten the 4 Agreements and given it to him.
Of course.
Who could have planned that
That's
book
so
would
funny.
change his life?
Maybe Busey could.
Maybe we got to give it to Gary Busey.
Oh my gosh, he would like that kind of thing. So let's talk about grief, because you said you were going to grief counsel Dave a bit. Right?
Yeah, the thing is, with my father's death, I don't think I really grieved it till I got sober. It was
you can't.
It was 20 years after he died.
Yeah.
And
one of the many things you have to address after you get sober. Right?
And to me, it came through music. A lot of things always come through music. And I was listening to a song, and it reminded me of my dad, and my mind opened up in ways that it was trapped. Right? Because you got all the prejudice of a dysfunctional family and all that. And out sprung just pure love and how much love he had for me. And I hope you know, Dave, that Chris had such love for you. I think, in magical ways you guys were connected, and that somehow you got to access that, the love, instead of all the conditions and all the situations. And there's something about it.
Right.
That,
No, it's bittersweet, Bob. It's bittersweet. It's painful,
Yeah, but I now that you've kind of put it where I understand it, Chris could have never had a podcast because he wouldn't know how to hook up the microphones.
Right.
Or he would never get around to it.
Right.
It took the two of you, like as a whole, to make a whole. And it's just devastating. It's very sad. But somehow, in the end, with my dad, the most important person in my life, it was just this thing of like how much he loved me, right? How much he sacrificed for me, how much hope he had in me, right? That's what when I was ready to grieve at what happened, right? And so,
right.
I think people think grieving is a sad boohoo, wear a black veil thing. It is that, but that's what you're doing all the time anyway.
Yeah.
How many times I said my dad killed himself when I was 15? You know how many times? You know how many clinicians lit up in rehabs when
Did he kill himself?
Well, he stopped taking his blood thinning medicine for the valves.
Why?
He didn't like the way he was living is the only thing I can conclude. I mean, he wasn't a real sharing guy. But what had happened was Curly Einboden, his best friend, had open heart surgery too. So they both became kind of invalids. If you remember, in the mid-'70s, you had open heart surgery. You weren't going to be going back to work. Right. And so they had each other, and then Curly killed himself.
Oof.
And so then my dad just had nobody, and then stopped taking his blood thinning medicine. But those are just details. It's just a matter of he was alcoholic, depressed, trauma survivor. But in the end, you got to let go of all that stuff and just know the connection with the person was so profound on your life and that they loved you so much. That's what I learned. But, it's important to get to that stage. What are the stages, Drew? You got bargaining.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go through each of them, but there's, was it anger, bargaining, denial, all that stuff.
I think explaining is a big part of it. I think Davis spent the last 11 days explaining, right? You had to explain it. You had
what
to
is
explain
bargaining?
It to me. And
what's the bargaining in grief?
Bargaining is I'll do anything.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's sort of. My understanding is it has several sort of features to it. But anytime you're trying to make a deal with either not having a feeling or getting the person back, or if I could only, whatever, for 2 more minutes, just talk to them, it's sort of a bargaining.
Makes sense of it all too.
I think I've been intellectualizing.
Left brain's a good place to go when you don't want to feel.
Yeah.
Right. And but the explaining.
I've felt a lot. I've cried a lot about this thing.
The explaining went a lot.
How'd you find out?
Oh, that's one of the craziest pieces. I was on the phone with Chris late on Monday night, and then and he was acting. He was in an argument with his girlfriend, and because he had been drug tested. And he knew the drug test was coming back positive. So he was in this crazy fight because he was using all over the place. He had drugs in his car. He had drugs hidden in the apartment. And the theory is that he wanted his girlfriend to leave so he could get high. But he was getting high anyway. But he was on the phone with me, kind of hysterical about the fight and kind of feeling badly because me and him hadn't been getting along. Because he had been so high, he had been putting off me and putting off Dopey, and he knew that's not what he wanted to do. So by the end of the night, we had this very beautiful conversation about our next moves and this and that I was there for him because I could tell he was not himself. And then he said, "Call me in the middle of the night because my girlfriend won't leave." And I said, "Okay." So I called him in the middle of the night. He didn't answer the phone. And then in the morning at 6:30, I texted him. At 6:31, he texted me back that he was okay, that things weren't good, but things would be okay, that he was alive. He texted me, "I'm alive," which he never would have said. And he said, "I'll call you in a few hours." 4 hours later, his girlfriend calls me and says she found his body. And I didn't believe her.
Oh.
Yeesh.
You know?
Were you the first person?
She said, I found Chris's body. No. She called his sister and she called 911.
Yeah.
She's about to be a doctor from Harvard. She's in Harvard Medical School.
Right. I remember this. Yeah.
She called yeah, you remember Chris was telling you about his beautiful plans for the future.
Yeah.
Well, just, you know.
What does she think about all this?
She's fucking going through it.
Yeah.
She is going through it. She is she's in grief counseling. She's in therapy. I suggested she go to Al-Anon or Narconon or something just to pass it along.
Well, the fact that she had not been going, ugh, you know what I mean? Dealing with somebody like Chris.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think Chris had her very much snowed because
I get it.
By the time she met him, he had 4 years clean.
Yeah.
And she never had an addict in her life like that before. And Chris could get over it because Chris could talk clinical to her.
Yeah. Yep.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's a very treacherous situation. God,
immediately I want to know what happened between 6:30 and 10. Jesus. That's how quick
Well, I bet you he got off the phone and he got high. You know, and they found him with a needle in his foot, you know. And it's just so crazy because this guy was so, like, he was physically big. You know, he was like 6'2". He was very broad, and he was just so full of life. And to imagine him cold and stiff, it's just such a scary thought for somebody. I mean, for anybody, but Chris especially. He was just a very warm, lively person.
Right.
And when you think about what he survived, it's got to be fentanyl again.
Yeah, it hasn't come back yet, right?
Yeah.
I told you about.
I don't know.
I told you about the friend of mine.
Please.
The friend of mine who, you know, he'd been dabbling again, and I called him.
It's a treacherous time,
well,
man.
but
Between the pot and the adderall and the painkiller, it's just so, and the benzos.
This guy had 8 years
treacherous.
sobriety. Get this. So I call him because a friend of mine said, please talk to him. I want him to come out here because I know how hard it is to get sober again. Very few people are able to do it.
I know.
And so, and he's like, no, there's, you know, I'm here in Florida and there's sober living going to let me stay here. So then I heard he was using full on. So I called him. Or I texted him, and I said, dude, call me. And he calls, and we talked for about 2 minutes. I just said, are you doing dope? And he's like, yeah, but not a lot. And I said, well, know that you're not doing dope. You're doing fentanyl.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I got a straight connect. I know I'm not doing fentanyl. And when it came back about 6 months later, he died. Only fentanyl in his system.
Perfect.
No heroin.
Perfect.
So they're dealing fentanyl saying it's heroin.
It's cheap. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think you can only do that in the East Coast,
Why?
right? Because it's white, because it's white powder. Here is tar heroin. I mean,
right.
You know, it's easier to do in the East Coast because they're all used to white heroin, right? Isn't that true, Dave?
Yeah, I bet you. But I bet you if you're in L.A. and you say, I got this fucking this powder from the East Coast, Californians will be psyched to do it. I know that when I lived in Los Angeles, if somebody ever had powder, I was like, cool. You know what I mean? Like it'll be easy
China
to
white.
hide.
They call it China
there.
white, but I don't know that it's from China. Well, now it is from China. If it's fentanyl, it actually is China white.
Fentanyl white from China. That's funny.
Well,
no, they always called it China white, but it was so stupid because it was not from China and it was barely white. It was like who knows where tan.
It was like,
you know.
It was like gray chalk, and and it wasn't from China, and it wasn't white, but they called it China white. Now it is from China, and it is white, and they
just call it fentanyl. Now call it heroin. But let's, if you don't mind me switching gears,
hysterical
for 1 second. People want us to talk a little bit about Demi Lovato.
Yeah.
And Dave, I want to include you in this conversation just in case you have some thoughts.
Can I just give you my take on it? I think she relapsed a long time ago.
Oh, of course.
And it was, you know, it was a statement about our industry.
Yes.
That a little girl who doesn't know her ass from a hole in the ground, I'm sorry, is a destination point of rehab. Now, Betty Ford was a little different than Demi Lovato.
Well,
the celebrity culture around rehab.
But I would argue that Demi had other mental illnesses, so she became a she had eating disorder, she had bipolar disorder, she had cutting, and so
why should she be the marketer for a rehab center?
She should not be, and that
I don't think any of these people should be.
So to me, the fact that she had a sober coach, when I first heard she had a sober coach, I went, okay, well, something's wrong with her sobriety. At 4 years in, you don't have a sober coach. Dave, you agree with me on this?
Yeah, I'm with you.
So do they have sober coaches in New York? I think it's an LA thing. I don't think it's a
music.
No, Bob. Guess who was a sober coach?
Chris.
Right up to the minute he was. Yeah.
Oh my
Chris
God.
was a sober coach.
No. Well, that again.
Oh my God.
But that tells you about that. That can also be why he went out too, because being a sober coach is too intense.
I thought it was
for people
just
in
an
early
LA
recovery.
thing.
Well, I don't know if he was actually. Let me make this clear. I'm not sure if he was a sober coach, but he did do a bunch of sober companion jobs.
Yeah, that's what
Is
a
that the
sober
same thing?
coach.
Yeah,
same thing.
In any event, people should have autonomy several years into their sobriety. So she's got a weakness in her sobriety, so she relapsed. She also wrote a song about how tiring it was to be in sobriety. You're complaining the same thing right now, Bob, and it is hard work.
It's
and
emotional. It's not tiring.
Well, whatever it is, she was tired of doing it, and she tried it her way, and guess where it goes, and here she is. And so, good, she'll get better, right?
Well, I'm. I don't even know who she is, to be honest with you. So,
I met her once. She's really a lovely kid. She's really
I'm sure
lovely
all those Disney kids are lovely. But what I'm more focused on is I work in an industry that can take a little girl like that with 90 days sobriety and use her to market a rehab.
No.
And then. Here's what's more shocking to me, and it shouldn't be.
It
shouldn't be in the age of Trump.
Yeah.
But people want to go to that rehab that little girl from Disney Channel who's 90 days sober tells them to go to. This is insanity to me.
Yeah, it is.
How the rehab industry has allowed itself to be marketed.
Well, the fact that she had that dual relationship is unconscionable, number one. But number two...
But so does Waller has it, so do all these people.
Number two, we live in a time when people don't trust experts. So non-experts are primed to be followed right now. And experts, I can't trust them.
Well, celebrities. Everybody wants to trust celebrities. And we're talking about capitalism. You know what I mean? We're talking about
but what
write
kind
me
of
a check
person
and I'll say what you want.
But this goes, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is a real passionate issue for me. Lindsay Lohan was given a scholarship at a rehab in Malibu, whose name I will not say. And the conditions were that she promote the rehab on Oprah Winfrey and have this red carpet discharge of which all the paparazzi were invited at the gates of the rehab.
Oh my God.
Now that's all fine because the recovery industry is one of the sleaziest industries I've ever been in, and I've been in the music business. So that's saying something.
So glad I'm out.
But what kind of person goes, I want to go to the rehab that Lindsay Lohan just got out of?
People that are desperate and don't know any better and don't want to get well, frankly.
Bob, we're talking about junkies.
Yeah.
A junkie wants to go nowhere.
Yeah.
It's okay, I'll go to where Lindsay Lohan went to. Mom, you send me there. Lindsay Lohan said it was good. I'll go there. But the truth is with this stuff, we're talking about a spiritual solution to our horrible problems. And it's very hard to advertise spirituality effectively.
That's right.
You know what I mean? How do you do it?
I'm going to North Dakota
How do you capture somebody the right way?
I have a rehab. Here's what it is. I've worked in this industry for 22 years. I'm a certified chemical dependency counselor.
Now you have to call yourself a substance use disorder
I'm not
counselor.
a substance use disorder. I had an argument with the doctor. I saw you. I forgot to tell you. So I did this thing with this panel thing with these doctors. And I said, does that mean that there's people that use methamphetamine substance orderly?
That aren't addicts. Yeah. Well, don't use the word addict. That's pejorative.
So do you follow me, Dave? Because if you're going to change addiction to substance use disorder, that means that some people know how to use heroin and methamphetamine correctly.
Oh, Jesus.
Isn't it true?
No, logically it's true, but it's not true. What they're trying to do is parse out frequency of use, onset of use, co-using. They're trying to break it down into minor categories so they can use it for research. So maybe there's differences amongst the different categories. That's all I'm saying. Why somebody can use a lot but control it, why some people lose control immediately.
There already was.
I'm with you. Listen,
ASAM already had a continuum of early stage,
yes,
late,
but they don't necessarily,
stage, late stage.
They don't buy that necessarily. They made.
Well, I went right from early to late, right through it over a 10-year period of time. How about you, Dave? Did you start in an early stage where there was no consequence from your substance use, and then got into a place where there was, some fallout, some stuff was starting to go wrong, but you continued to use, and then you got into late stage and nothing was going right, and you continued to use?
Yep.
Is that what you did, Dave?
Yes, I would say that described my experience pretty well.
Why do we need a new description of it? It's always the same.
I don't know.
Listen. I'm not one that needs. I think nomenclature is a good thing. I really don't. But all right. So you
I just feel sorry for
right?
because I think that Demi Lovato was misled by these sleazy people.
Yes.
Right.
Possibly.
And
I don't know.
And that Dave, do you know what I'm talking about? We talk about it all the time on the Dopey podcast and on Don't Die and By Ourselves Alone.
Wait, by the way, let me just say, I sent somebody over to Cry Help recently. Had a great experience.
Yeah, it's the greatest.
So there are great
Cry Help
programs.
is the greatest.
Yes.
If you can get somebody to go there.
Right. And so but there are still great programs out
Watch
there.
how great it is. Dave, you ever been in Cry Help?
No, I never went there.
Oh, I went there twice.
I never went. Chris went there. Chris went there. I was never there. But I was so consumed with my friend dying that I didn't even hear the Demi Lovato story. Not to mention that I never heard a Demi Lovato song. So I'm very old and out of it. I don't really know anything about it except that she's famous and she relapsed.
Yes.
That's all I know about the Demi Lovato
That's
story.
about the whole story. And she apparently relapsed bad, by the way. She 3 days in an ICU, man. 3 days in an ICU.
Yeah, so that
and then a week in the hospital. So that means aspiration.
Endocarditis or something?
No, I think aspiration. I think she probably aspirated. But I mean, if she was shooting drugs, yes, that's a possibility. But and it sounds like aspiration. Found down, you know what I mean? That's
it's sad.
Story,
It's sad. And I just think that so many desperate people are turning to an industry that is so sleazy that when you're a celebrity, you will be exploited by that industry.
Absolutely. We've seen it again and again. But, Bob, I'm not sure it's spotty in terms of what my profession.
And then we get the criticism for being exploitive, and we're not doing it on a professional basis. All the people that came on our television show wanted to, and were fully informed, and we asked them over and over again, are you sure you want to do this?
Yep. And afterwards, they didn't feel exploited. They felt like it was a positive experience.
Yeah.
So, and many of them are well.
Well, I feel like Demi Lovato and Lindsay Lohan and these people with unlimited funds, somebody with actual experience should approach them and say, stay away from all the bright lights and take them to someplace where it's quiet and calm and they can get the real information.
Clearly,
and then maybe they can pass it along in right living.
Clearly, Lindsay did. I mean, Lindsay's
somehow
doing way
she
better.
just got
and
out
by
of
the way,
America.
I wonder.
You might have to get out of America to get away from the
have
sleazy recovery industry.
Have you talked to Michael lately?
No, but I've been seeing her.
I think you would be amazed.
Oh, him?
I think you'd be amazed. So I figure that may have something to do with why she's doing better. I'm just saying. For the record.
I mean,
I'll go on record.
Yeah, Michael's become as outspoken as me against the recovery industry.
Absolutely,
but he was a part of it.
So were you? Doesn't that tell you something?
Yeah, it's got to change. Has to come from within for sure.
Yes.
But what do you do about these people? Just inform the public. Like, listen, nobody with 90 days sober should be working in treatment. Nobody with 90 days sober should be the representative of a rehab.
I will just
Nobody
remind you,
with 90 days sober should do anything but go to meetings and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes.
When
and make phone calls.
See, now I'm going to get criticism about the smoking cigarettes.
I know. Chew Nick Red gum.
Nate just looked at me.
If you remember when Barry Blum, our co-director,
right.
I finally got him gaffed into the program. I approached him at 3 years sober, and he knew to ask his sponsor.
Murphy.
He asked everybody in his team. They all said, not ready yet. For year 4, I came back around. He didn't know whether he was ready or not, but he had a solid enough program to know that his brain shouldn't be making that decision. Year 5, I went to him, and his team went, yeah, I think you could do that. And then he understood why now, once he got involved in treating addicts, how challenging it is and why he was not allowed to begin getting in the program until he really was sober.
I think probably.
How old was he?
He's in his
40s, late 40s in the beginning. Listen, I'll bet somehow Chris did come to our unit, but I don't remember him being on our unit.
I think he more was in the locked
No,
unit.
I saw him at 2 East because I did the groups up there.
I think we were consulting on him and stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
But he knew where the real unit was at Las Encinas, and he avoided us like the plague, right, Dave? Remember he talked about that?
Yes. He also would talk about how he was in groups with you, Bob.
Yeah, he was.
And he would tell you all sorts of bullshit, and you would laugh at him. And he just thought that was like the best counseling he ever got, was you laughing at him.
I'm telling you, addicts, they need a sense of humor to get well.
I'm telling you, it was.
No, that's for sure.
Working at Las Encinas was such a blessing. I mean, so many fun things went on there. You're never going to have a rehab like that ever again. It's impossible.
I'm sorry to say you're probably right.
Right.
On that happy note.
Chris got to go to the funnest best.
Yeah. Well, Dave, we're going to come visit you in New York. I'm going to come see you, all right?
Please do. I would love that. Can I ask you guys a really weird question before I go?
Yeah.
When I don't remember it very well, but it was about, I want to say 10, 11 years ago in Los Angeles. I think I was at a Tarzana Recovery Center, and I had a counselor who was the bass player for John Sebastian for the Welcome Back, Kotter theme song. Do you know this guy?
Yeah. Well, I know Alan Sachs, who produced Welcome Back, Kotter. Yeah.
The bass player from that track was the guy who basically started me on my path to recovery.
Wow.
I don't remember who he was. He was a great dude. And I just want to thank him. If you ever see that dude, say what's up to him and thank him for me.
Yeah, I think he was a part of MAP. Yeah.
Well, remember Stan Galperson who ran that program?
Stan, he's still there.
I know.
Yeah.
And so we'll send something out to Stan, see if we can.
We'll figure out who it is, but and that was the greatest era, the 80s and 90s in LA, rehab with MAP and Music Cares and Exodus and Los Encinas.
There's a lot of great
I remember the first time I went to Los Encinas to pick up somebody, like I was sober for a minute and I was picking up somebody to go on a pass to go to a meeting, and they were in the swimming pool, and I was like, what kind of fucking great rehab is this? They got a swimming pool.
Right. But if you remember, we had to call people out of that pool all the time.
Yeah. So,
all right. Well,
that's funny. Love you, Dave, and I'll see you soon.
We're here if you need us.
Love you guys.
All right, buddy. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
Right,
tell people to go to www.dopeypodcast.com and tell Mackenzie Phillips she's come on Dopey.
Yeah, well, we'll get her on that.
We'll talk to her. All right.
Yeah.
We'll see you all next time.
Dopey.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
All right, Dave.
Bye, guys.
too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Dopeypodcast.com or whatever. It's the greatest podcast.
And you and I'll wrap, and we'll see everybody next time.
Yeah, see you next time.
All right, that's about it for this episode of This Life. Check us out at KBCB in Lawrence Savon, 790 Midday Live Talk Radio, Monday to Friday. You can also tune in every day live via the magic of the internet at kbc.com. If you miss it, we've made it simple for you to find all the shows at drdrew.com, the Adam and Dr. Drew podcast, the Sing What I Do By Myself, Dr. Drew podcast, This Life, of course, with Bob, Swole Patrol, Mike Catherwood, his new health and fitness podcast. You can find us on Twitter at This Life Podcast, at Dr. Drew, Derry W, at Rehab Bob Forrest, and of course, our lovely producer at First Lady of Love. I think I know who that is. If you love this show, please subscribe and tell a friend. We appreciate it when you do. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. Send us a message. Join the email list at drdraw.com/contact. You'll also get a weekly email from us on that. While you're at it, at drdrew.com, please support our sponsors by clicking through the banners. We only advertise products that I can get behind. So thank you for supporting them, those that support us. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.